I want to talk to you for a few moments about Bernie Sanders. It's a different kind of introduction. I want to reject this idea that who Bernie Sanders was in the 1960s is irrelevant. Who you are, listen, who you are and what you do, who you are and what you do, what you fought for, and who and what you fought against is always very, very relevant. Now, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, when people step up to lead, what they did and where they were during the Black Lives Matter movement, it's going to mean something. And we're going to know who was leading during this time and who was fronting, right? Dr. King once said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And there are a lot of young people in the room today. I want to tell you about a teenage Bernie Sanders who moved from his hometown of Brooklyn, now my hometown, to Chicago. He moved from Brooklyn to Chicago at the height of the civil rights movement. And it was the most tumultuous and challenging time this nation had faced since the Civil War 100 years earlier. And most Americans, particularly most white Americans, remained silent during the civil rights movement. And it was that silence in the face of lynching, in the face of water hoses, in the face of bombings of homes and churches, in the face of assassinations, in the face of attack dogs being released on children. It was white silence that broke the heart of Dr. King as he languished in a Birmingham jail. Read his letter from Birmingham jail. It was that silence that Dr. King told us said he thought said more about the soul of America than the brutality and evil of this place. Let me tell you, Bernie Sanders loved Dr. King. And long before we used the phrase, a teenage and young adult Bernie Sanders had the notion that he had to use his white privilege to fight back against racism and bigotry and oppression and inequality. Listen, I don't know if you know some of this, but inside of Bernie, as a teenager and as a young adult, the desire to hold this country to a higher standard began to well up in him as a young student at the University of Chicago. He became the chairman of the university chapter of the Congress for Racial Equality. And Bernie merged that group with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Listen, Bernie literally helped lead the first known sit-in in the city of Chicago, where 33 interracial students camped outside of the president's office of the University of Chicago, protesting segregated housing on campus. Did you know, disturbed by police brutality in Chicago, Bernie once spent the entire day blanketing the city with flyers about the issue, only to notice that he was being tracked by police who were following him and taking down the flyers. Bernie hates to tell these stories, and he probably hates me telling them right now, because he has resisted using these stories for political capital and personal gain. Even when advisors and others have told him that it would boost his profile and reputation with our own communities, he has resisted because he does what he does because he cares. Listen, I'm not giving you an exaggerated myth. This is the origin story of a political revolutionary. In 1963, 9 years after Brown versus the Board of Education, the white power structure in Chicago was still fighting against school equality like their lives depended on it. They literally treated black children in Chicago like they had the plague. Not only were black schools woefully underfunded, they were overcrowded and bursting at the seams. And at the same time, with every black classroom in Chicago past capacity, sometimes with school children sharing chairs and desks, a report found that 382 classrooms, white classrooms across Chicago, were completely vacant. And Mayor Richard Daley, who ruled Chicago with an iron fist and is still hailed as a Democratic hero to this day, and School Superintendent Benjamin Willis decided that before they would let a single black child fill one of those vacant classrooms, they started putting raggedy trailers on the playgrounds and in the parking lots of black schools throughout Chicago. They started putting black school kids in those trailers. The trailers were scorching hot in the summer and bitterly cold in the winter. They were so cheap and poorly constructed that they often had holes in the floor, allowing rodents to come in and out at will. And those awful trailers became known around Chicago, and Bernie will remember this, as Willis wagons, named after Benjamin Willis, the school superintendent. And in August of 1963, just days before the March on Washington, the city of Chicago was about to install some more Willis wagons for black school children, and a brave group of local activists and organizers decided to put their bodies on the line to block the installation of those trailers. Out of his reverence for what the activists in the South were doing, Bernie has long since downplayed what happened here, but it took so much courage. Bernie, side by side, primarily with black women, went to this space where they were supposed to be installing the trailers and refused to move. Don't tell me it's irrelevant. It is his origin story. Even when the Chicago police told Bernie that they would arrest him and forcefully remove him, he continued to refuse. And even when they decided to arrest Bernie and pick him up and carry him out of that parking lot so they could install those Willis wagons, the man kicked and screamed and resisted the entire way. Have you seen that photo of them carrying a young Bernie Sanders out of there? I love it. And that photo to me is not just who Bernie was, it's who he has been his entire life fighting against the system. He did much more than this. I could tell you a dozen stories, but today I wanted to tell you who Bernie was when it counted. Before we knew him, before he ever ran for office, before he was a national figure, he was always a fighter. He has always rejected the status quo. He spoke out against apartheid in South Africa before it was popular. And today he speaks out against apartheid-like conditions in Palestine, even though it's not popular to do so. Listen, it takes guts in this country. It takes guts to refuse to be a Democrat or a Republican. It takes guts to do what Bernie did this morning, to stand outside of Disneyland and tell the country that 1 in 10 of their workers has been homeless in the past 2 years. Bernie told them to their face that 2 out of 3 of Disneyland's workers are food insecure. That 3 out of 4 Disneyland workers don't even make enough money to afford basic needs, while their CEO literally makes hundreds of millions of dollars. Listen, I campaigned for Bernie to be president. I believe that he could beat Donald Trump, and I still believe he could. We might need to try that one more time. But I want to tell you, and I'll close with this, I want to tell you that what touched me most about Bernie was on the campaign trail, I saw with my own eyes his love and support of my dear friend, Erica Garner. Erica, like so many people here today, was forced into becoming a reluctant revolutionary freedom fighter after the NYPD murdered her father in cold blood. Now, Erica, excuse my language, children, she had a bullshit radar. She could see BS coming from a mile away. So many politicians looked Erica in her face and lied to her over and over and over again, saying what they were going to do to bring her family justice. And Bernie, listen to me, Bernie was literally one of the only political leaders that she trusted. And she loved Bernie, and she gave her life, literally passing away this January, fighting for justice for her family. And my very last conversation with Erica, I kid you not, was about how much both of us loved Bernie Sanders. It's a rare moment that you get to introduce your hero, but ladies and gentlemen, please stand up, get on your feet, and welcome Bernie Sanders to us this evening. Put your hands together.
Well, let me begin by saying that Shaun has thrown me way off. So I spent my time writing these remarks, and then Shaun says all that stuff. And I want to thank Shaun for the very, very kind remarks that he made about me. But I want to tell you what I believe from the bottom of my heart. And I just want to thank all of you for your love and support. But at the end of the day, it's not Bernie. It's you and you and you. It's all of us together.